जय श्री राधे, श्री वल्लभाधि की जय हो, श्रीनाथ जी की जय, Shri Vrindavan Dhama ki jai. The 86th day of our readings, Varta 79, the story of Gopal Das, a Kshatriya from the west, Naroda. Bhav Prakash. In the eternal Leela, Gopal Das is Sri Nandaraji's closest personal attendant named Jaswant. On the day when Varuna Dev kidnapped Sri Nandaraji, Jaswant had taken him to the Ghat and then gone home to do something there. He left Sri Nandaraji alone. That is when Varuna Dev grabbed him. When Sri Thakurji heard about this incident, he went to Varuna Dev's abode and rescued Sri Nandaraji. Baladev then addressed Jaswant. Where were you when Varuna Dev grabbed hold of Sri Nandaraji? Jaswant told him that he had gone home to do something. Baladevji cursed him to fall to earth because he had caused so much trouble to Sri Nandaraji. He was the personal servant, but he had left his master alone. He was born into one Kshatriya family in the west in Naroda. He was only 7 but was very learned. He became a very important person and always had 2 or 3 people to accompany him, both in front of and behind him. He was also very rich and thus had little regard for anyone else but himself. If he heard about anyone who was really good, he would always find some bad thing to criticize them for. Near where he lived in the west, there was another village. He married a girl from there. Just after he had got married, he was bringing his wife home and on the way met a well-known pundit and began to debate with him. They remained like that, camped on the road for 3 whole days whilst they discussed. Gopal Das could not defeat the pundit and so he started a fight. Gopal Das's father went to try and stop it, but the pundit's men killed him with swords. When his father was killed, Gopal Das ran to fight armed with his gun, and the pundit and his men ran away. He searched for them all over but could not find them anywhere. He performed his father's last rites and then came home. Soon after, he set off for Dwarka to have the sight of Sri Ranachorlalji. Sri Acharyaji was there at that time. Gopal Das heard that Sri Acharyaji was very learned and that he had defeated the impersonalists in debate. Gopal Das came to see him with a mind to debate with him. He was defeated as soon as he started, so he asked of Sri Acharyaji, "What exactly is this Vaishnava path? You say that Sri Thakurji lies in everyone and everything and that the whole world is his form. At the same time, you also say that a Vaishnava can be rendered impure just by the touch of a dog. If a dog is also part of the Lord, then how can one be polluted by it?" Sri Acharyaji replied, "Our path upholds the teachings of the Vedas. The Vedas state that the whole world is God's form, but within that there can still be a consideration of what is pure or impure. One must be equally passionate to all. The Vedic way defines Vaishnava Dharma. On the other hand, you maintain that the supreme unmanifest is all-pervading and omnipresent. So why do you go around hating and criticizing everyone? Why do you wear clothes? Brahma has actually nothing to do and remains like a witness to all action. Now think." Hearing this, Gopal Das understood. He said to Sri Acharyaji, "Oh, please accept me into your shelter. I have spent my whole life on a misguided path. If you accept me, my life will be fulfilled." Sri Acharyaji told Gopal Das to go and bathe, and when he came back, he initiated him with the Lord's name and Brahma Sambandh. Gopal Das requested Sri Acharyaji to come to his home, which he did. There he initiated Gopal Das's 4-year-old son and his wife with the name of the Lord. Gopal Das asked Sri Acharyaji to tell him his duty henceforth, and Sri Acharyaji said, "You are not really capable of seva at this time because your wife is not a divine soul. You are a divine soul, and you have the feeling of separation from the Lord. Only those who feel separation from the Lord can have his experience in their hearts, but often cannot achieve the actions of seva." Sri Acharyaji wrote out the Brahma Sambandh and the 5-syllable mantras and gave them to Gopal Das. "Offer everything you have and consume to these mantras. Only ever eat what you have offered to them. My wish is that you initiate, with the Lord's name only, anyone who comes to you. You have always been a leader type, so I will let you keep this status. If anyone comes to you for debate, then debate with them. No one will ever defeat you." After giving these instructions to Gopal Das, Sri Acharyaji went to Adel. Gopal Das gave the Lord's name to many. He became a strong Vaishnava. He discussed with many, and when he spoke it was with the strength of Sri Acharyaji. He became famous throughout the West. Part 1. Once Sri Acharyaji came to Dwarka, he passed through Naroda on the way, and so he went to Gopal Das's home. Gopal Das was not at home, but his 14-year-old son was there. Sri Acharyaji asked him where his father was. Gopal Das's son replied that he had gone to get something for his seva. Sri Acharyaji was very displeased with Gopal Das's son for saying this. He said, "Gopal Das's son's words are the most inappropriate, and so I shall not stay here." However, he decided to stay until Gopal Das got back so that he could see Gopal Das's mindset and how he would answer the same question. When Gopal Das arrived, he bowed down to Sri Acharyaji, who asked him where he had been. Gopal Das replied that he had been to earn some money to fill their stomachs. Sri Acharyaji was very happy with Gopal Das's answer, for it is appropriate for Vaishnavas to speak in this way. They should say that they went to do some worldly activity and not mention the Lord's seva. Bhav Prakash. It is the way of the path of grace that if one goes for some seva, then one should disguise it as some worldly activity. Accomplished Vaishnavas never reveal their path. They just say they were doing some ordinary task so that they do not get praised for being engaged in the Lord's service. Part 1 continued. Gopal Das then requested Sri Acharyaji to stay there for a few days. However, Sri Acharyaji wanted to quickly leave for Dwarka. He left and did not stay there. Bhav Prakash. Gopal Das was a fine devotee, but his wife and son were not of mature mind. He did not think that he would be happy staying there. Part 2. Gopal Das was missing Srinathji, so he went to Srinathji Dwara and had his holy sight. He came down with a fever, so he fasted for 2 days. Then one evening Gopal Das felt intensely thirsty, but he had no water. He had one manservant, but he had gone to sleep already. Gopal Das's throat became so dry that he could not even speak. He was going crazy. Then Sri Govardhanathji came from the temple with his own water pot, and he himself gave Gopal Das to drink. He left the water behind and went back to his place. Bhav Prakash. Srinathji left his water pot there in order that people know what a dear Vaishnava Gopal Das was, that Srinathji should have personally given him the water to drink. Souls who hear the stories of the Lord are fulfilled, and so also by stories of great Vaishnavas. Gopal Das was quite wealthy, and so, seeing his apparent luxurious services, it could evoke criticism, and that would cause those people to cause an offence. After this incident with the water pot, everyone knew that Gopal Das was a pious Vaishnava. In this way, Sri Govardhanathji halted public criticism. He was thus making the statement that, even though Gopal Das was quite wealthy, he was indeed a dear Vaishnava, since he was a disciple of Sri Acharyaji. He put the water pot there because of his heart is very tender, and he cannot tolerate the suffering of his devotees. Part 2 continued. The next morning, when the temple servants bathed and entered the temple, they saw that the water pot was not there. They were all worried. But then Srinathji told the elder Ramdas that Gopal Das had been very thirsty the previous evening, and so he had taken the water pot in order to quench his thirst, and that he had left the pot there. Ramdas went to Gopal Das and asked him how he had managed to drink during the night. Gopal Das said, "I had a high fever and was extremely thirsty. My throat was parched and I was going crazy, so I do not really remember who brought me the drink." Ramdas told him that it had been Sri Govardhanathji who had come there in the night to give him the water, and that he had left the water pot here. "I have come to get the pot. You are most fortunate," he said. Gopal Das spoke up. "Oh, the Lord was caused too much trouble by me." He told off his manservant for not keeping water nearby. "You went to sleep too," he said, "and I was very thirsty. Sri Thakurji had to make all the effort because of me. That is not good." Ramdas took leave and took the pot back to the temple. Gopal Das got better. He went for the sight of Srinathji and then came home again. He was constantly feeling separation from his Lord. Part 3. One day he was feeling particularly morose. He composed this song of separation. "Oh, when will that blessed day arrive when I will be able to have the vision of Sri Krishna, dark as a rain-filled cloud, wearing a peacock feather and a beautiful flower garland around his neck?" Part 4. One time Sri Gosaiji went to Dwarka to have the sight of Sri Ranachorlalji. On the way he passed through the village of Naroda. He camped outside the village. In the afternoon, Gopal Das came there to have the sight of Sri Gosaiji. He was with 2 of his men. These 2 men saw Sri Gosaiji and then requested Gopal Das to get them initiated by him. Gopal Das told them that he was also authorized to initiate with the Lord's name. "When we go back, please come to my home and I will initiate you." However, those 2 men told Gopal Das 3 times that they wanted to be initiated by Sri Gosaiji specifically. All 3 times, Gopal Das gave them the same solution. Sri Gosaiji then asked them what all this talk with Gopal Das was about. doubt, and they told him that they wished to be initiated by him alone. He fulfilled them both by doing so. Then Sri Gosaiji said to Gopal Das, "You have been accepted by Sri Acharyaji, of this there is no doubt. The Lord will never abandon you. However, all the devotees that you personally have initiated will never be accepted by us. They will all be contrary to the path of grace." Hearing this, many became Sri Gosaiji's disciples and were fulfilled. The rest of them turned against the path of grace. Sri Gosaiji used to call them Gangoj, like Ganga streams that get separated from the main flow and stagnate in muddy ponds. Gopal Das lived constantly in the mood of separation. Bhav Prakash. When water gets separated from the main river, it becomes different, like the pool of all people's sins, touching which one gathers impurity and takes on that very nature. So here we understand that because of Gopal Das's character of mastery, his and all his initiates' lives were negatively touched. Humility is a huge consideration. It perfects every endeavour. Here it is shown that ego is a massive obstacle. So here we understand Gopal Das was a recipient of Sri Acharyaji's great grace. Sri Govardhandhara himself granted him his experience, for he gave Gopal Das water from his very own water pot. Thus concludes Varta 79, the story of Gopal Das, Kshatriya from the West, Naroda. Although really there is no end to his story. Aaj ke Anand ki jai, sab Vaishnavan ko sadar, saprem. Jai Shri Krishna, Shri Vallabhadish ki jai ho, Jetipura Dham ki jai ho, Gopalpur Dham ki jai ho, Shri Acharya ji ki jai ho. Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe.